Hi, and welcome to the Postural Rehabilitation Comparisons lesson in the Foundation online course. This lesson is about looking at the culmination of the postural rehabilitation model of Hoofcare and where that leads us with the practical aspect of the horses that we work on a regular basis. Meaning, it's all well and good to have a model, but unless you can practically apply it and get a predictable outcome, what's the point, right? So, we had talked earlier in this module about what postural rehabilitation is in a very basic sense. And the practical side of it is, what are the things that we need to do in order to help the horse overcome their postural compensations that break them down over time? So, in that lesson, we did talk about all of these things. I just want to cover them in a little more detail now because I've refined some of this information and I've expanded it, and I think it's valuable, especially when we look at the case studies. So we know from the previous lesson that horses receive information on how to interact with gravity from their vestibular system, which is their inner ear, their somatic gnathic system, which is their dental occlusion and their innervation of the TMJ. Their ocular system is their vision, right? Looking at horizon lines, looking at the relationship of the sky versus the ground. And of course, their position evaluators, which are in their proprioceptive nerves in their feet, as well as nerve receptors in their muscles, tendons, joints, and skin. So all of that sensory information goes into the neural system and then influences how they move and how they stand, and implements then into movement in response to gravity. Okay, so this all happens in the flash of a millisecond. Our nerves fire that fast, and the information we receive is processed that fast, and the horse is the same way. Okay, so in that sense, when we look at how we have to look at it as stewards of the horse, we look at how do we manage their care in domestication, where we can influence these things like the hoof care with all the proprioceptive nerves in the feet, their teeth with the innervation of the dentition, how they chew and how they arrange their jaw, which relates to their atlas occiput, and all of those nerves that are so highly innervated for balance, as well as of course, looking at their body compensations overall and helping them overcome their learned spinal reflexes and their decompensation over time. And we do this with looking at the Foundation Hoof Guidelines as our goal with hoof care. We do this with looking at equilibration dentistry, which looks at the balance of the mouth, not just the lack of sharp points and things that are grossly in the way, but also does the mouth support the trapezoid of the skull as an individual, as a fractal of equine expression. Okay. And then lastly, of course, we want to look at how does the horse compensate? Where are they struggling? And then how can we reset that interpretation of their nervous system in order to have a more beneficial outcome long term? And that's the postural rehabilitation component. So, looking at all of these things as a model for our approach to the horse and the foot means that we need to be objective in what principles are we applying and are we achieving the desired result. So that's the goal of this lesson, is so you all can see a little bit of the story behind these horses, and time and time and time again how we see that the horse is overcoming functional, structural, mental, emotional, behavioral challenges when these things are managed and applied, okay, in principle. So, for example, the first horse that I wanted to highlight is an 18-year-old Arabian gelding named E.T. And he came to me because he was bridle lame in the ring. So meaning they couldn't figure out why he was lame and it wasn't repeatable, but in the show ring, he would go lame every time. And a lot of times, even though he was a national champion Western pleasure horse, he would be eliminated from the competition because of being off under saddle. And they would call that bridle lame. So this was 2010. So this was a number of years in the past, but his story is still impactful to me because even just assessing his feet based on the hoof guidelines and then trimming him to promote our goals with an ideal foot, his posture improved exponentially just in that initial kind of implementation of this idea. And then yet we still needed to address his dentistry from a very global perspective, and we like, of course, the IAED dentists, the International Association of Equine Dentistry trained dentists, for this kind of work. And then we look at the condition of his feet, the shape of his feet, the distortions, the pathologies at the beginning, and then where we got him to by the time he was using his body better, standing more square, less compensation, and was able to get back to work and be successful and win additional national championships. So, this horse started as a type 2 foot, and with the trimming and the glue-on composite shoes, we were able to get him to a more ideal foot, and he became much more functional and went back to winning. Okay? This one you may have seen in the past. She's in a number of different locations for me because she's an amazing success story about how small changes can make a big difference. And so Dancer at the time was a 12-year-old paint mare. And she stood very base narrow, very goat on a rock when I first met her. And yet after her trim, she stood more square. She did not have obscenely long toes. However, she had some challenges as well as a big old navicular spur on her right front, which was probably a calcification of the distal sesamoidean ligament, which is what suspends the navicular bone in the region of the pastern. And yet we were able to address the balance based on the hoof guidelines. Eventually we had to go to shoes in order to build her some prosthetic, since we couldn't trim the balance into her after a while we wanted. And now she's still sound. She's still out there even today in 2023, living her best life in beautiful body condition, being trail ridden sound, certainly at least 5 days a week. So that's really exciting because we just applied the foundation Hoofcare principles. We also looked at overall mental, emotional wellness, and she healed in a very functional place. And that's the goal. This next example is a horse named Sadie. Some of you may have seen her case study from social media like Facebook or Insta. And she's an 18-year-old quarter horse mare. When she came to me, she looked like a sausage, wasn't very horse-shaped, and she had these ridiculous long feet. And so we started working on her feet and getting her a little more comfortable in her body, and then we still had to kind of work our way around what her various challenges were. So the big turning point seemed to be when we offered her the opportunity to put her hind feet up on Wendy Murdoch's Surefoot slants. And she put those hind feet up, way up, as you can see in this middle picture, on her Surefoot wedges, and parked herself up there and then leaned over her front toes and telescoped her neck down to the ground. And that was the first time I'd ever seen her eat and stretch and look like a normal grazing pattern, even though, no, she wasn't getting grass. So this was pretty cool. So we went ahead and we put shoes on her behind, following the guidelines, 5 to 8 degree palmar P3 angle, plantar P3 angle, straight hoof pastern axis, capsular and phalangeal alignment, those sorts of things. And she did extremely well to the point where now she's standing predominantly perfectly square and, just really engaged in her environment and her paddock buddy and so on and so forth. So she's done very well, but for her, the pivotal moment was giving her the opportunity to show us what she really wanted to help her body with her Hoofcare behind. And then the last one I have for you right now, just to keep this all very short and to the point, and you all can go back and you can watch these and you can record them and you can talk about them and you can, just review them over and over again, to help you get this in your mind. And I'll be adding to it at some point, I'm sure. But this last one is Kyra. She's a 12-year-old spotted Walker mare. And she came to me and she was really sad and very overweight and could barely walk. And so we ended up actually bringing her to Daisy Haven Farm because of her abscesses in her feet. So we could work on them and get them resolved. And you can see that down here in the bottom left pictures of the feet, that she's got an open wound to the sole here. And so this was very scary because this is very life-threatening. And yet, if we gave it some time, we used some Beamer on her, kept up her shoes, kept up a shorter cycle, and she actually ended up growing out really, really well, and really honestly doing fantastic. She has not left the farm. She's now part of my teaching herd, and she's a doll. And, it's a good lesson in prioritizing what's important to the owner, but also acknowledging where your own limitations are and keeping that on the forefront too. Because, here's this challenging situation where I know that if I can get this horse standing square and super chill and relaxed and engaged socially and mentally, and her metabolic situation controlled, I know she's going to do great. And the proof in that is the non-distorted hoof capsule, the realignment process, as well as the square posture. So I hope this has been interesting for you so far. I will be adding more horses to this presentation as we go. And, just being able to share the modality that's in my mind with those around me who are going out and adding and helping horses is fantastic. So next, you're going to continue on to Module 2. I hope this is very helpful, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.